Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started with our October 1 enrollment reporting webinar for 2025 to 2026. The report that we are talking about today, October 1 enrollment, collects student counts for students aged 4 to 20 years old for EPS funding purposes. So we are looking to collect economically disadvantaged, special education, multilingual learners, attending students, and out-of-district students are included in this report. And this October 1 enrollment also collects EdFacts data for federal reporting programs. So we are also collecting that data. So we want as much of your enrollment data so we can get you as much of the funding and resources for your school as necessary. So all of your student counts, 4-year-olds as of October 15th will be counted, and up until, so 20-year-olds, you have, if a student turns 20 this school year, which is July 1st to June 30th, if they turn 20 years old within that time frame, they are eligible for EPS funding. Students who are receiving special education services can be enrolled until they are 22 years old, but they will not be eligible for EPS funding. They'll only be eligible until that 20th year enrollment. All of the resources that we're going to talk about today for the October 1 enrollment report are located on our MEDM support page under student data entry and reporting. Synergy uploads, this is just the Synergy uploads section, has all of the resources for how to upload your data, also manual entry guides if you're choosing to enter the data manually into Synergy. We also have student enrollment guidance in our student enrollment guide section. So how to enroll home instruction students, how to enroll homeless students, multilingual learner identification, economic status. We have a lot of resources there. So I highly recommend taking a look at that page and going through those enrollment guides and taking a look at those resources that are available there. At the bottom of that page, there's a resource for student reporting instructions, and that section is going to have the specifics of how to navigate to the report that we're talking about today, which is the October 1st student enrollment counts. That guide will take you there. And then the Special Education Student Counts EFS 05 Part 1 is also part of this collection, and that resource is also listed under our student reporting instructions. So you can print off those instructions, take a look at them, use them, send them to your superintendent if you so choose. Those resources are available there. More on the data entry side, those resources on the MEDM support side under student enrollment guidance would be very beneficial. This report is only looking at October 1, 2025 enrollments. So the report will open next week. It might actually be open and starting to populate some data now. You might be able to see some things. If not, it will open on October 1st. And so the reporting range will be that 10/1 date only. Only enrollments on that 10/1/2025 date are going to count on this report. So from October 1st until October 15th, the report is open and populating, and you can go in and you can start running some validations. We start sending you emails, start checking out your data. And the only thing that you can't do during that time is certify the data. So the certification window actually opens on 10/16. This report is due on 10/30, so the 30th of October. So you have about 2 weeks of validation review time, and then the last 2 weeks of October are actually going to be your time where you can go in and certify the data. So we do recommend trying to get as much done in the first 2 weeks of October as you can, because once we get into certification being open, reports will start to lock down. And if someone else has certified, the data won't go through to the report. We have to decertify their report. Then you have to recertify that data. So it gets a little bit tricky. So we do ask that you try to get as much in as you can before that 10/15 transition to 10/16. And we also recommend waiting until 10/30 because of that reason for decertifying and recertifying, to make sure that all of the changes that are necessary on all ends from all of your tuitioned districts and things like that, making sure that their enrollments are in that impact your reports. So that way you don't have to decertify and then recertify and go through that whole cycle. So it is recommended to wait till as close to 10:30 as you can to certify this report, just to allow that time for everyone to get their data in that may impact your data. We had talked over the summer about using the Connect platform to enter data for this reporting. We have made the transition. For anyone who has not heard, we are using State Synergy. Hopefully you've heard by now, but we are using State Synergy for our reporting this fall, including this October 1 enrollment report. So you can enter all your data into Synergy with an upload or through manual entry. If you would like to use Connect in parallel to see how it compares with Synergy, that is a welcome process, and we do recommend that you kind of do some of that parallel testing. But make sure that any data that is going to fully impact your reporting is accurate in State Synergy. That's where everything is going to be coming from. Make sure that that is correct. You can play around in Connect. Make sure it's absolutely 100% correct in State Synergy. So the data flow will come from your local student information system with an upload, or some of you may have a button that submits to state, or through data entry directly into State Synergy. Every hour, the Synergy ETL will run up to NEO. So that's when you can see that countdown on our website, on the MEDM support site, that counts down to the bottom of, or the top of the hour. And at the top of every hour, there is a refresh of data that is coming from Synergy into NEO. So if you're making changes to data in your Synergy system in State Synergy, you're not going to see them until that hourly ETL runs. We are still continuing with our hourly ETLs throughout the reporting period. A few years ago, we had you had to request a refresh. That is not coming back. So you will still have that hourly ETL running regularly throughout this entire month. So it will be waiting for that hourly transition for that data to be visible in any NEO report. So if you are seeing errors, if you're getting emails from us that are about validations, always go to Synergy. It might be right in your student information system, but if that data hasn't moved up to State Synergy, you'll want to make sure that it's right there so that it can get into NEO. If you're still struggling to see your data in NEO, again, sometimes another district having certified their report can create an issue where you're not seeing it. At that point, please reach out to MEDM support so we can investigate that and we can see if we need to decertify our report so that we can get the data updated on your NEO report. But again, this is only looking at October 1 enrollment, so let's talk about what that means on the next slide. So enrollment dates must overlap 10/1 in order to count on this report. So I have a couple of examples of students who have enrollments in Synergy, let's say. The first student we can see here, the green check mark means that this student will be counted in the report. As you can see, that light blue bar in the middle, that is the 10/1 date. This enrollment for this student started in September and overlaps October 1, so they are going to count. In the next example, this student has a big red X over them. This student is not going to count on your report because this student had an enrollment from the beginning of September until pretty close to the end of September, but it does not overlap that October 1st date. So if this student was supposed to be in your report, or if they were supposed to be on someone else's report, you would want to just make sure that whoever needs to get the subsidy for that student has the student enrolled. The second example, or the third example, I guess, third option down, has a big green check mark over him. That student is going to count in the report because even though they started a little bit late, they still have an October 1 enrollment, so they will count on the October 1 report. The fourth example down, big red X, that student started after October 1st. They are not going to count. on the October 1 enrollment report because they were not enrolled with your district. They may be enrolled with another district to count for them, but they would not count on your report in this instance. And then the fifth example, starting on 10/1 does count as a 10/1 enrollment. So a start date of 10/1 will put them on your October 1st enrollment report. The second to last example here, the sixth option here, six, is a student that started the year with you, but then left shortly or left pretty close to that October 1 date. And when they left, they were gone until after October 1st, but they came back. This student is not going to count because they were not enrolled on that October 1 date. So this would be one that you would want to investigate to see if the student was supposed to be enrolled with another district, or if the enrollment never happened with the other district. You would want to work that out to see who would need to get the subsidy for that student, and change start dates to make sure they overlap 10/1 if necessary. And then the last example here is a student that exited on October 1st, and an exit on October 1 is considered an enrollment day for October 1st, so that student would count on the report. So always make sure that you're checking to see if you're not seeing a student that you know is sitting in front of you on 10/6, check and see if their start date in Synergy actually overlaps or was before 10/1. And if it was after 10/1 and was truly after 10/1, they should not be counting for you. So just make sure that you're kind of keeping that in mind as you're looking at this data. It is only enrollments on October 1st that are counted here. We have quite a few resources on our website. One of the most robust resources that we have is our student enrollment guidance document. This page outlines multiple situations for enrollment. I believe we have a little over 40 on that page, or maybe close to 40, that outlines all of the enrollment requirements for a student. So it will tell you who needs to have a primary enrollment, if there needs to be a partial enrollment for a student, where the resident town should be, what the fiscal responsibility, which is actually residency status now, what that code should be for their situation, who's responsible for the student, who's getting a subsidy count for them, who's getting an EFS 05 count. All of those requirements are listed out on this report. So I do highly recommend taking a look at this resource. It is on the student data entry and reporting page. And use it if you need to enroll some of those unique situations that you may be running into in your school districts. This report is going to reconcile resident town geocode with residency status. So if you have a residence town geocode that does not align with a residency status for the R, O, and S codes, that is going to create an issue with your enrollment. So the R code is resident of school unit. That student would need to be residing in a town within your district. So if you put in a town that is outside of your district, you're going to get an error for that. The next code would be O, paid by resident SAU or EUT. This is for a student that's residing outside of your district, but attending your district. And the other district is going to receive tuition or receive subsidy for them. And maybe you have an agreement with them to transfer funds for that student's education. A superintendent's agreement. Superintendent's agreements are students who reside out of district also, but you either have a formal superintendent's agreement, or for other circumstances, maybe there isn't one in place, which I'll get into what those situations are momentarily. But that is going to mean that the responsibility of the student is falling to the attending school district. And so, but they are residing outside of town. So you would need to make sure that those align. There's also some exceptionality here for our C, which is a Maine public charter school fund. Students who are attending a Maine charter school are required to be enrolled with the C code, with the exception that if the student is residing in an unorganized territory, they would need to be enrolled with the fiscal responsibility O, which is paid by resident SAU or EUT. And I apologize, that should be residency status. At the bottom there is the residency status of paid by resident SAU or EUT. I missed that one. Again, enrollment guidance does provide some resources for how these students would be enrolled. So please feel free to take a look at those, but also know that you may get some errors, which we'll talk about where you can find those in the report, that may tell you that they're not reconciling with one another. Students who are experiencing homelessness have a couple different ways that they can be enrolled with a residency status. So students who are experiencing homelessness are allowed to remain in their SAU of origin, which is where they were attending originally. And in these cases, they're allowed to stay there. There may be some question about, though, like, how do we code these students? Because maybe they're not living in your district any longer. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. The first one is to leave the initial status of the student. So let's say the student started with you and they were resident of the SAU and their resident town was within your district. If they now are experiencing homelessness and they are residing out of your district, you can leave that initial identification of the student, how it was when they first started their enrollment this year. The next option is that if you want to track where the student is truly residing, you are welcome to do that. And you can code them with a paid by resident SAU or EUT. However, keep in mind that that funding is going to go to the other school district. So you would need to make sure that the resident SAU, the other district that where the student is living, is aware that funding is going to them, and that you would like an agreement in place to make sure that you're getting funded for educating that student. That one can be a little bit tricky, so just keep that in mind when you're using that code for those students. The third option is that you can use a superintendent's agreement to code these students and track where they're residing out of district. So you can put their resident town where they are residing, use a superintendent's agreement, and in this case, a student does not need to have a formal superintendent's agreement in place. This is just a formality for the student. They do not need to go through the process. They do not need to have the approval, but this is just to make sure that the funding is going where it needs to go for who is educating the student, and so that you can track where the student is residing. So the recommendation here is either, I would say, using R and maintaining what the student had before they were experiencing homelessness at the beginning of the school year, or using a superintendent's agreement, and in which case you do not need to have a formal one in place. Students who are receiving home instruction and maybe have a full-time, part-time status. The home instruction flag is only meant to be used for students with a partial enrollment in public school. So if a student is not attending a public school in any capacity, they should not have a home instruction flag. They should not be enrolled in Synergy. So if they're attending school, though, and they're attending regular education for any portion of the day, you would flag those students within the 25% increments of 1 to 25 being a 1 for FTPT status, 26 to 50 is a 2 for FTPT, 51 to 75 is a 3, and 67 to 99 is actually a 4. So Cindy, the enrollment guidance document is right on the MEDM support page under student data entry and reporting. If someone from our team would be willing to snag that, that would be great, but it's right on our website too. Back to home instruction and full-time, part-time. So with a home instruction flag, students who are receiving home instruction and attending a public school are the only ones that should have that option. If a student is 100% home instruction, they should not be enrolled in Synergy. And if they are enrolled in Synergy, they need to be exited as transferred to home instruction. Those students are not reported if they are receiving full home instruction with no time spent in a regular education classroom. Full-time, part-time status 5 is for special education services only. This is for 2 very distinct situations for students who are receiving special education only from the district. If a student is only receiving special education services while they are in a private school and the resident town is, or the resident district is still providing special education services because it's not available at the private school, that is one of the instances where you would use an FTPT 5. And the second option is that if a student is expelled and they are still receiving special education services, schools are obligated to keep students who are enrolled in special education enrolled for the purpose of receiving their special education services, even if they are expelled from school. And so in this instance, there would be an FTPT 5 for this student to be enrolled. The other thing that's going to be important on this report is economic status. So we talked about enrollment. Now we're talking about another upload, which is economic status. And for the purposes of EPS, it is required that there is an annual collection of economic status data. This has been a little bit tricky with schools who are in different types of provisions for nutrition. And so here are the 4 different scenarios of nutrition provisions that could be taking place in a school district. And this would be something to work with your nutrition director to determine which part you're taking part in, so you know which forms to send to families and get what you need back in order to report your EPS reporting, which is separate from that nutrition reporting. If you're in a traditional meal operation where you're collecting your free and reduced meal applications every year, you are welcome to send out your free and reduced meal applications and use that for both school nutrition and for EPS reporting purposes. We also recommend that as a little bit of a supplement, because some families maybe are a little bit hesitant to fill out the free and reduced meal application. It's a little bit, an alternative to that is an alternate economic status. It's a little less invasive. So you can also send out the the alternate economic status form. So you can send out both of those forms in hopes that one comes back, at least one comes back, so that you can report for EPS purposes. Another option would be special provision base year, base year. So special provision 2 has a base year where you collect your free and reduced meal applications, and you then have your base year for the following years. If you're in your base year, collect your free and reduced meal forms for the purposes of nutrition, also can be used to supplement your EPS reporting. And you can also collect your alternate economic status forms to supplement if needed. For special provision 2, if you're in a non-base year, you're not allowed to collect free and reduced meal applications. In this case, it is still required that you collect economic status data. You would need to collect the alternate economic status form from all of your families in order to report your economic disadvantage counts. The same is true for community eligibility provision, CEP, where you're not allowed to collect your free and reduced meal applications. You should send out your alternate economic status forms to families so you can collect for EPS reporting purposes. If you are sending both of the forms to families and both of them happen to make it back to you, it is important to note that what the data on the free and reduced meal application overrides the data on the alternate economic status form. So we have expanded one of our resources in our economic status section of our student data entry and reporting page to include this information here. So in this first example across the top, you've sent out both forms, you received the free and reduced meal application back and the alternate economic status form. Yay, you got both of them back. If the free and reduced meal application is saying that the student qualifies for free or reduced lunch, that's the one you're going to use. You're going to report either free or reduced, and it's going to depend on how the student qualified. Even though you got the alternate economic status form back, that data on the free and reduced meal application overrides that alternate economic form. So you would report from the free and reduced meal form. So the second example here is that if you get the forms back and both of the forms say that the student does not qualify and the alternates form says they do not meet, then you would report full price for that student. If you get both of them back and the free and reduced meal application says that the student qualifies for free and reduced lunch, but the alternate economic status form says that the student does not meet lower income household, you are able to use the free and reduced meal application to report the student's status. Free or reduced would be what you would put in depending on the student's qualification. If you get both of them back and the student indicates on the free and reduced meal application that they do not qualify for free or reduced lunch, but you get the alternate economic status form back and it says that the student meets lower income household criteria, that free and reduced meal application overrides the data from the alternate economic status form. So you would need to report full price for that student. They would not be economically disadvantaged. And then at the bottom section here, it gets a little bit easier. You only get the alternate economic status form back. If you only get the alternate economic status form back and it says that the student meets the lower household income criteria, you would report alternate economic form. That's our new code this year. If the student returns the form and they say they do not meet the lower income household criteria, you would report full price. So question in the chat, if we are CEPs, are we collecting free and reduced meal forms? So if you're in a CEP program, which is a lunch program, that is when you do not collect the form. You don't collect, you would have to collect free alternate economic status form. Let me go back because I think there's a different question maybe that's being asked from this. So if you are in a community eligibility provision, which is a lunch program, then the student, then you can only collect the alternate economics. I believe maybe your question, Paula, in the chat is about special purpose private schools. Special purpose private schools are not collecting that data. That data would be collected by the resident. So Naomi, great question. Direct certification students that also complete the alternate form. You should report the data that you receive from the family. The data that you receive from the family should be what is reported in Synergy. There are validations in place that if a student is on the direct certification list, they will show as economically disadvantaged in your NEO report. You are welcome to refer to your nutrition director or your superintendent who have access to the direct certification list to cross-reference that and make sure that that is happening. I would not recommend entering the data that you do not have locally into Synergy based on the direct certification list. So direct cert will override what you enter if you enter something that the student indicated that they are not economically disadvantaged. It will show them as economically disadvantaged. There is a lot of other data that I haven't really hit on today that will be collected in this October 1 enrollment report. We have covered that data in previous webinars this fall. The webinars that we hosted for the fall reporting 2025 update, which was the initial enrollment enrollment webinar that we did back in August, the economic status reporting webinar, the special education enrollment webinar, and multilingual learner reporting webinars. Those are all on the Maine State SIS training, and those are all deep dives into those topics. I recommend taking a look at those recordings that we have to make sure that you're getting the full picture of accurate data reporting for those. It's a lot to put into this one, and we're going to focus on the report today. But if you do not have access to the Maine State SIS training YouTube playlist, it is a direct link access only, and you would need to email Medem support. If you have it bookmarked, the bookmark has not changed. Please don't worry about that. But if you do not have access to this training playlist, please email Medem support and they can provide you with a link so that you can go in and you can see the webinars that we've hosted this fall up until this point and get all of that backing information. So now let's dive into the report and where you're going to find it in NEO. The navigation of NEO will be from the NEO dashboard to student data, student reports, October 1st student enrollment. If you do not have NEO credentials or if you do not have access to student reports, you would need to have your superintendent submit an access request form on your behalf from the Medem support page so that they can get you access into the data that you need. In order for us to process that, someone would need to enter you into NEO staff so that we can make sure you have an active staff assignment. Since it is a form on our website, we do verify that there are active staff assignments for anyone who has had an access request form submitted on their behalf by someone to make sure that we're not providing information to those who do not need it. So you would need to have an active staff assignment, then your superintendent can submit the form and we can get you access. When you log into NEO, this will be the screen that you'll see or some variation of it. You may have fewer or of the modules available to you, but you would be able to select student data. Then student reports, you can select it up from the menu bar or at the bottom option under welcome to student data. That is also going to take you to the same place. From there, you get this beautiful long list of student data reports that are due throughout the year. And the one that you're looking for, these are in alphabetical order. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom half of it. And October 1st student enrollment count, formerly EPS enrollment. I'll also point out that a little bit further down in the special services section, there's also the special education child count EFS 05 part 1 detail, which can be accessed from here. It can also be accessed inside the report for October 1st student enrollment. So once you select the report, you're going to click right into it. You're going to see all of the districts that you have access to, and you would be able to select through if you have multiple, and you can sort through, find just one specifically, however you want to do that. From here, in order to see the report and see the data that's there, look at the errors that you have, and get started on the reporting, you would select View. From here, there are a couple different things that you're going to be able to see. You have Account Summary Details. This is going to be the details report of all of the students that you have entered into Synergy, and it's going to calculate for you how they are counting for funding. There's also an error report. So we saw on the previous screen there was an error. If we wanted to make sure that that error was not going to interfere with our data and our subsidy, this is the report we would go and we would take a look at. The special education child count, EFS 05 part 1 student details, that's the one that I was showing you on the previous screen. You can access from special services, but it's also available within the October 1st student enrollment report to make sure that all students who are receiving special education services are counted. Then there's the out of district placement report. Students who are placed out of district are students who will maybe have subsidy that you will be receiving, that maybe you're tuitioning them to another school district, or you're responsible for making sure that they are enrolled somewhere. This is the part where it gets a little bit tricky with certifying and decertifying. Students on that report won't be enrolled by your school district, they'll be enrolled by another school district, but those counts may benefit your school district and may be a subsidy count coming to you that then you would be paying over to them. So this is an important report to note. It is here. And then there's the attending student report. That's your students who are attending your school, enrolled in your classrooms, sitting in your seats every day. Or well, on October 1st. So from here, you can link into the review. So from review here, it's going to take you into the overall aggregate counts of the students. So we can see here, there are two sections of this report. The top section is the special education child count. This is an aggregate count of all of the students who are receiving special education services according to the data that's been entered into Synergy this school year. The special education child count, EFS 05 Part 1 details, that details report we saw on the previous screen and back on the reports screen. That is going to give you the details of all of the students who make up these counts. So if you're wondering who are my 2 students who are enrolled with a exceptionality of autism, you can go to that details report and you can see those 2 students that are listed that way. Or maybe the 2 with multiple disabilities or the 1 with intellectual disability. You can see those students who are listed out in that details report. This top section is required to be certified by your special education director. This is the first step. The next section of the report cannot be certified until this step is completed. The special education director certifies first. Once it is in special ed certified, it will move over to the superintendent where they can then go in and certify the report. And that's the bottom section. This is the aggregate count of all of the students with a current school year enrollment in Synergy. So you have to have re-entered your students into Synergy, re-enroll them, get all their data back in there, get it up to date. That's what's going to be showing on this report here at the bottom section. The count summary details report will identify the specific students who are making up these counts. Both your your attending students, your subsidy students, all of that information will be listed out on that report. This is where the superintendent certifies. Way down here at the bottom, there will be an option for them to certify. And once they do, as long as there is no one that has other data that would impact this report, either by adding a student, maybe it's not going to add subsidy, but they're residing in your school, in that school district, that would be a reason that we would need to decertify, and then there would be a recertify. Maybe it will impact your subsidy and it will give you another subsidy count. Those are another instance where we would need to decertify the report. So it's really important here to make sure that all of your enrollments outside of your catchment area are complete before anyone comes in and certifies this report, both the top section and the bottom section. It may be that the special education director has certified as well, and that will lock the report also. So that is why we wait until 10:30 to get those certifications done. So the count summary details report, if you're looking for a specific student, you can search the data. You can also export this if you want to send it to specific people regarding, how many enrollments are in my pre-K program. You can export your pre-K counts. You can export by school. You can sort it however you want, so you can send it to the people who can validate the data and make sure that everything has been accurately reported in full and completeness. You can also see here that there's attending counts and subsidy counts. And there are instances where these things don't line up with one another. So in the first instance here, the student is enrolled with a resident of school unit and they're attending the school within the district. That is going to be an attending count because they are a student in the seats every day, or well, on 10-1. And on 10-1, they were a resident of the school district according to their fiscal responsibility. And that is going to mean that the subsidy comes to my school district. The second example is a student who is in my classrooms every day, so they're attending. However, they're paid by another source. Paid by other source is not a subsidy count. That's a private pay. That's a code that's going to translate to no one is going to get the subsidy for them. For the Wonderland student, this student is attending a different school. So I actually have a 0 attending count and I'm getting subsidy for them. So I'm still responsible for that student. The second example is the second to last example here is a student who is attending my school on a superintendent's agreement. I get an attending count and I've taken responsibility for that student based on that superintendent's agreement. I also get the subsidy count. And the last example is a paid by resident SAU of a student who is attending my school, but they live out of district. That resident of SAU or EUT, paid by resident SAU or EUT, is going to provide the subsidy to the other district. And then that's where you want to have that agreement with them about how those funds will get over to you. There is a question in the chat about, will I see students that are FTE code special education only provided by the school on this report? Yes, this report will show those students, and you will see, I'm trying to see if they're FTE. You would have a note in the, I believe that there's a note for those ones that you would see the special education only provided by the school district. So in that case, you would be able to see them there. Okay. The next report we're going to look at is the error report. So I need to clarify that, Michelle. I just need to clarify that for you. Reach out to Medham's support for that question, that next part of that question.
Yeah, I can chime in and answer it, Allie. Yeah, you're exactly right. They'll be on there, and you'll just have they'll have the counts attending, but no count subsidy, and there'll be a note saying they're FT5. So yeah. Perfect.
That's what I thought. I just was not feeling confident. So thank you for that, Mike. The error report. The error details report, there are 2 tiers to the errors that you would be seeing. So Michelle, he said that the student would not count for subsidy. They would count only for special education for an FTE 5. Well, FTPT 5. Error report, again, tier 1, tier 2. There are 2 different levels. Tier 1 has to be resolved in order for the superintendent to be able to see the certify option. So if there is something in the tier 1 issues, which is errors, that would need to be resolved by the school district. So you want to make sure that you're taking a look at this error report and resolving those errors that are coming up. Tier 2 errors, which are this bottom section, which are warnings and notifications, those are going to be things that won't necessarily prevent certification, but they are potentially going to impact subsidy. So you may want to take a look at them to make sure that they are accurate and that, those situations are true. Some of the ones we see are that like a student over a certain age does not receive subsidy. And so I'll go into what those examples are here next. So the first set of errors we're going to see are the tier 1 errors. So these are students that, these are things that need to be resolved prior to the report being certified, and they will prevent the certification of the report. So charter school funding invalid option for non-charter SAUs. If you're not a charter school and you're using the charter school funding code, you can't do that. Fiscal responsibility invalid for charter school students. You need to use the charter school funding or fiscal responsibility O for those students. So they're just going to give you these errors, and they'll pretty much kind of tell you what to do. So you can see like a couple rows down, student is marked incorrectly as 100% federally funded. If the student is not marked as residential on our end, then that is going to be an error for you. So just make sure that you're checking these errors for students. A lot of these are just kind of alignment with those reconciling of resident town geocode and where the student is actually residing and whether or not your district can use a certain code, things like that. The next set of errors, which are warnings, are things that you may see and you just want to make sure that are valid for students. So a student, for example, who is 100% state and federally funded, that student will not provide you with a subsidy count. So you want to make sure that that is the correct marking for that student. Some of these synergy catches, so they're kind of outdated, but these are just all of the ones that are potentially could come up for you. So these would just be making sure that the resident town is correct and things like that. So if you come across any of these, feel free to reach out and ask your questions. Special education child count is the EFS 05 Part 1. This is the report that the special education director will certify. This is the details report of that. So the certification will happen with those aggregate counts in the top section of the report. This is the details of the students who are receiving special education services. So it will go into the list of students and it will tell you where they're attending, what their exceptionality is, and verify that information here. The out-of-district placement report will tell you students who are attending out of district. So we had one student who was attending out of district, and that was this Wonderland student. You would see that information. This report, as well as the attending student details report, are pretty long reports, so they actually extend far beyond my screen here. So make sure that you're scrolling all the way over to the right to check out all of the data that's there. And then the attending student details report. This would be students who are in the classrooms in my school on October 1st. It's really important with this data that you are validating the data that you have as much as possible. This data is really important for your EPS funding. It's also your EdFacts reporting. So make sure that you're checking your enrollment data, checking to make sure that all your multilingual learner students are enrolled, making sure that all of your special education students are enrolled, all of those different types of enrollments, making sure that that all is coming out accurate. So that's where some of the exports of these reports can be really helpful to send them off to other people to make sure that the data are accurate as you're sending it up. We will catch validation errors, but we can't always catch an accuracy error. So just make sure that you're running things by your school district, by all of your staff who are working with all of your students to make sure that everything is representing with the most accuracy what is happening in your school. This is going to require some collaboration with other SAUs. Again, your enrollments may be from SAUs outside of your catchment area. You may have students who are attending a district attending school in another district. In those instances, you would be waiting for that school to enroll that student before you certify your data, because certifying before other districts get theirs in that impact your reports, it can sometimes create a domino effect of data that gets kind of switched around. So we recommend waiting to certify your data until 10:30, which will decrease the number of times that we have to reach out to you because we've decertified your report to allow someone else's data to come through, and then require a recertification by your superintendent, by your special education director, and then your superintendent. So if you have questions about any of your students who are attending another school district, we do recommend using the contact search to reach out to those school districts and make sure that those students are enrolled. The NEO contact search can be found on the from the NEO dashboard. It's on the schools and SAU's data entry and reporting page, as well as the data warehouse. So we just threw a lot of information out there. And so our recommended steps for this report are that SAU staff with Synergy Access get all of the enrollment data in that you have on October 1, prior to October 1, start taking a look at things as you can, and start to clear your errors in the Tier 1 issues and review your Tier 2 issues. So you have to get all your data in, then you can start doing your your validation checking, your accuracy reviews, things like that. And then step 3, work with your someone with NEO staff data is going to be able to pull a report, those attending student details report, special education EFS 05 Part 1, out of district placements, all of those reports, pull those reports, start looking at them over, making sure everybody is included in there, pull in your special education director, your multilingual learner coordinator, someone with military enrollment information, pull in your business managers. They're going to want to see the subsidy counts and make sure that the subsidy is coming in the way it needs to go. And then anyone who can verify enrollment counts would be really great to pull in as well. Once you've reviewed, make sure that all of the reports, count summary details, attending student details, out of district placement, special education count, are all accurate and complete. Then, and only then, and we recommend again, waiting until 10:30, October 30th, to certify, have your special education data or a special education director come in and certify the EFS 05 Part 1 top section of the report. And then your superintendent come in and certify October 1 enrollment at the bottom of the report. So we do recommend waiting until then. But use October to do all these other steps and making sure that your data are as accurate as you can possibly make it. And that is our webinar today. So we're going to pause for questions here. If you have questions that come up after today's webinar, please reach out to medms.support@maine.gov. Our website is Medms Support. I highly recommend going just to your Google search, typing in MEDMS support, and it will probably be the first thing that pops up when you search us. So go ahead and use that resource. Highly recommend bookmarking it once you have it. And then from there, all of the resources that we had today were from the student data entry and reporting page. So take a look at those. And if you have further questions or you want to chat with somebody about a problem that you're having, rather than email us, we have our phone number, 207-624-6896. Yeah, I can definitely cover that question, Todd. So the question is, can you cover FTPT settings for home instruction students who are only enrolled to go to schools such as UTC? So I'm going to start with that part. And I think it will answer the second part of the question. So students who are attending UTC or some sort of a CTE school, if a student is attending CTE and they're fully home instruction, they are not receiving any regular education at the SAU, then the student would need to be enrolled with a part-time, full-time, part-time status of 1, which is 1 to 25. So you would enroll them with the 1, and then that would allow the CTE school to pick up the enrollment for that student. If you want further information, Todd, about that student or that situation, we did a CTE webinar last week, and I think that will answer your question a little bit more depth with some visuals that might be helpful. But a student who is enrolled in CTE only and home instruction has the right to be enrolled in their resident SAU in order to get their enrollment with CTE. And you would get a 25% of a student as a subsidy count. So it's pretty exciting. I'm not going to send out today's slide deck, but it will be available on the DOE data reporting or DOE data YouTube playlist. So you can see the video, the recording after today's webinar. I have a lot of moving parts in my webinars, so I don't usually send them out. Anytime, Spence. I'm here to help. October 30th. Hold off until then. You got it. All right. Again, if there are any questions after today's webinar, please feel free to reach out to us, medms, medms.support@maine.gov or 207-624-6896. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. We will talk about the EFS 05 Part 1 in more detail on Thursday. Thanks.